The lake was the first thing I saw as I stepped out of the car. Wide, quiet, and touched by a thin layer of morning mist. It stretched out like a giant silver mirror, still and cold, as if it had been waiting for years without moving. The air tasted different here, sharper, cleaner, a little lonely. It carried the smell of wet pine, damp soil, and old memories I thought I had buried. I stood still for a moment, holding the handle of my suitcase. My heart beat too loudly for the silence around me. The cabin stood a few steps ahead, low and wooden, with dark planks and a roof that leaned slightly on one side. The same cabin, the same porch, the same creaking steps that once carried my laughter and then later carried my breaking. 7 years, 7 long, heavy years. Yet nothing here had changed. Not the trees leaning over the water, not the wind brushing through the leaves, not the little stone path leading to the door. Everything remained frozen in time, except me. For a moment, I felt like a stranger looking into a past life. I swallowed the tight knot of memories rising in my chest. This place, this house, used to be mine. Before he took it. Before he took me apart, piece by piece. I dragged my suitcase forward. The wheels bumped over the old stones, and each bump felt like a quiet heartbeat of the cabin itself. As I walked, a strange coldness settled in my stomach, something between fear and strength, between trembling and standing tall. Mark, my ex-husband, would arrive later in the day. He didn't know I was here. He had no idea. He thought the cabin was his and his mother's now, something he snatched from me with a smile and a signature. They both used to say I was too emotional, too soft, too dramatic. Patricia, his mother, would laugh and tell me, "Go cry in that lake cabin," and Mark would laugh with her, as if my pain was something small and amusing. I rubbed my arms, trying to push away the old sting of their voices. But not today, not this time. 7 years ago, I walked out of this cabin feeling hollow and defeated. But today, I returned as someone else, someone rebuilt, someone steady. The wind shifted, brushing my hair across my cheek. A long breath left my lips. I tried to prepare myself for what would happen when he arrived, but nothing in me felt truly ready. I placed my suitcase on the porch and touched the wooden railing. The texture was rough, splintered, just like old wounds. Something inside me twisted, fear mixed with strength, sadness mixed with fire. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The cabin smelled like old wood and quiet afternoons. Dust floated in the thin sunlight coming through the curtains. It felt familiar, too familiar, almost painfully familiar. I walked across the floorboards slowly, listening as they creaked under my feet, the same way they did when I paced here years ago after nights of crying. My hand brushed over the kitchen counter. The tiny scratch on the corner was still there. Mark made it when he dropped a knife after shouting at me. I shook the memory off before it could take shape. I couldn't drown in the past. Not now. I put my suitcase down and walked to the window facing the lake. The water looked colder now, darker, as if holding its own secrets. My reflection in the glass looked older but calmer, stronger, still. A small part of me trembled. Seeing him again would open old scars. But I needed to do this, for myself, for the truth that had been silent for too long. A sudden sound cut through the quiet. A car door. Then another. My heartbeat stumbled. I froze, every muscle tightening. They were early. Through the window I saw the car, black, familiar, too familiar. It pulled up slowly, like it belonged here. The engine turned off, the doors opened, and then I saw him. Mark stepped out first, taller than I remembered, shoulders firm, wearing that same confident, careless expression he always wore. He looked like someone who believed the world belonged to him. He hadn't changed much. Maybe a few lines around his eyes, a little more weight on his ego. But the man himself, the man who once made me feel small, was the same. Patricia stepped out next, clutching her purse like she was afraid the woods might steal it. Her posture was stiff, her chin high, her face tightened into that familiar look of judgment. She scanned the area like she was checking for imperfections, and then she saw me through the open doorway. Her face froze. Mark looked up, following her gaze. His eyes met mine. For a second, just a second, the world stopped. The memories, the silence, the distance between us. All of it tightened into one slow breath. His smile faded. A drop of confusion appeared on his face, and then a flicker of annoyance. "What are you doing here?" he said, stepping toward the porch. His voice hit me like a wave I'd been bracing for but still wasn't ready to feel. Deep, sharp, full of the same tone he used when he wanted to remind me I wasn't enough. I didn't answer. I kept my face calm, my eyes steady, my body still. I didn't owe him a single word. Not yet. Patricia moved behind him, crossing her arms like a shield. She always stood behind him during arguments, whispering poison into his ear, pushing him against me. I stepped out of the doorway so they could see me clearly. My heart was beating hard, but my expression didn't break. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. We hadn't seen each other in 7 years. 7 years where I learned to breathe again. 7 years where I rebuilt myself from ashes they left behind. But the past was a strange thing. It didn't stay dead. Standing in front of him again felt like opening a door I had locked and nailed shut. The rush of old memories, his laughter, his anger, my hurt, hit me all at once. Mark walked closer, confusion mixing with irritation. "You shouldn't be here," he said. You signed everything away." His mother's lips curled. The same old look. Annoyed, superior, disrespectful, dismissive. I stood still. As the wind brushed past me, carrying leaves across the ground. The lake behind me was quiet, but inside me, something loud was slowly rising. I didn't look at Patricia. I didn't need to. Her presence was like a cold shadow I had lived with for too long. Instead, I kept my eyes on Mark. He waited for me to answer. I didn't. The silence unsettled him. I could see it in the way his shoulders tensed and his jaw tightened. He was used to me crying, begging, breaking. He wasn't used to me being silent and steady. The woman he hurt years ago was gone. The woman standing in front of him now wasn't here for him. She was here for herself. He took another step. "Look, just say something." But I didn't. Not yet. Let him feel the quiet. Let him feel the shift in power. Behind him, Patricia scoffed loudly. The same sharp sound she used when mocking me during arguments. I still didn't look at her. I simply breathed. This moment, this reunion, was something I had rehearsed in my mind 1,000 times. But in reality it felt heavier, deeper, almost surreal. Seeing him again didn't hurt the way I expected. It didn't tear me apart. It simply reminded me why I left. The wind picked up, lifting the ends of my hair. The sky darkened slightly as a cloud drifted over the sun. The air seemed to thicken around us. 7 years ago, I walked away from this cabin broken and lost. Now I was here for the final chapter. Everything between us was burned, but the ashes were still warm. And this time, I wasn't the one standing in them. "This cabin is ours now," Patricia snapped, her voice slicing through the quiet like something sharp and cold. The sound of it pulled me straight out of my thoughts. Her tone, it hadn't changed at all. Still filled with the same judgment, the same bitterness, the same superiority she always used when speaking to me. As if I were something beneath her shoes. I didn't look at her, not fully, just a small sideways glance. Enough to acknowledge her, but not enough to let her feel important. Then I calmly looked past her. Silence can hurt more than any insult. I learned that the hard way. Patricia shifted, clearly bothered that I wasn't reacting. She wanted a scene, a fight, tears, something she could use to say, "See? She's dramatic as always." But I gave her nothing, not yet. Mark stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of her like he always did, as if he needed to protect her, not me. "You should leave," he said, trying to sound firm. "You signed everything away." His words floated between us, heavy but empty. He said them like they were supposed to break me. I almost smiled. Almost. He had no idea what was coming. Instead of answering, I turned and walked farther into the cabin, letting the quietness of the house surround me as they followed. Their footsteps were loud against the wooden floor, like they were stomping into a place they didn't belong. The cabin was dim, touched only by gentle strands of sunlight sneaking through the curtains. The air inside held a soft chill. It smelled like old wood and stillness. A strange comfort. I'd cleaned it earlier. Blankets folded neatly on the couch, the fireplace dusted, fresh flowers in a small vase on the table, simple wildflowers I picked from near the lake. Mark noticed the flowers first, his eyebrows pulled together in confusion. "You've been living here?" he asked, voice softer, unsure. I shook my head. "No." He waited. I didn't continue. I walked slowly, letting them watch, letting them wonder. Mark followed with his eyes, studying everything, the cleaned counters, the swept floor, the vase, the open curtains. He could tell someone had been here, but not living, just preparing. "For what?" he asked. His voice echoed gently inside the cabin. But I still didn't answer. He hated uncertainty, hated feeling like he wasn't in control, and right now he had no idea what was happening. There was a strange satisfaction in watching him shift, uncomfortable. His eyes went to my face. Again. Something softened there, something he tried to hide. 7 years ago, those same eyes watched me cry without a single touch, without a single word of comfort. Those eyes watched me break. A memory flashed sharp and quick. Me standing right here begging him to stay, his mother pulling him out the door, whispering, "She's holding you back." And Mark, leaving without looking back. My chest tightened, but only for a second. The pain was old, distant, like a scar. Patricia moved closer, her heels clicking across the floor. "Don't look at her like that, Mark," she said. "She's always dramatic, always trying to make herself look innocent. Don't fall for it." I still didn't look at her. Instead, I walked toward the small drawer near the window, the same drawer where I once kept important things. My hands moved slowly, steady, deliberate. Mark's voice had a spark of frustration now. "What are you doing?" I didn't respond to him either. I opened the drawer. The wood creaked softly, a small familiar sound. Inside lay a single envelope, white, unopened, hidden for 7 years. I held it gently, brushing my thumb over the edges. Behind me, the room went still. Mark's shoulders tensed. His whole body reacted like he recognized it instantly. His breathing changed, shallow, uneasy. I could feel his fear before he spoke. "That," he began softly, "that's not. Why do you still have that?" I didn't turn around, not yet. Because for the first time since they stepped inside, I could feel the shift in power. He had walked in confident. He had spoken loudly. He believed the cabin was his, but this envelope pulled the ground from under him. Patricia stepped even closer. "What is that? Why are you—" I turned sharply, cutting her off with a single cold look. She fell silent. For once in her life she didn't have words. "This," I said quietly, raising the envelope slightly, "is the last thing you left here." Mark's throat tightened. He looked as if the air around him was suddenly too heavy. "The thing you hoped I destroyed," I added. He swallowed hard. His mother looked between us, confused, irritated, losing patience. "Mark, what is she talking about? What's in that envelope?" Mark didn't answer her. He only stared at me. There it was again, fear, just a flicker, but real, and it felt like a strange kind of justice. I turned the envelope over in my hands and continued, my voice calm but filled with a quiet kind of pain. 7 years ago, I said, I lost something. Mark closed his eyes for a moment, like he knew exactly where this was going, and it wasn't the cabin. Patricia's face twisted. "What nonsense!" "Mom," Mark snapped, his voice cracking slightly. "Just let her speak." That silence was new, almost shocking. Patricia stared at him, offended, but for the first time, worried. I stepped closer to the window, letting the light fall across the envelope. The lake shimmered behind me, steady and cold. My reflection in the glass overlapped with theirs behind me, 2 faces from my past, full of fear and confusion. Mark took one small step toward me, his face pale. "You said you lost it," he whispered. "You said it was gone." His voice broke on the last word. I know what I said. Something inside him cracked. I could hear it in his breathing. He remembered. He remembered everything. And he knew what that meant. He waited for me to speak again, eyes stuck to the envelope like it was poison. I walked back to the table, slow and steady, and placed the envelope on the wood surface. The sound was soft, but it filled the entire room. Mark looked at it as if it were something dangerous. as if touching it might burn him. Patricia moved forward, snatching the envelope before he could stop her. "Enough secrets," she said sharply. "I want to know what she's—" She pulled out the paper inside. One look, 1 second, and her face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The paper trembled in her hand. A birth certificate, a child, a truth. "They never let me speak." "You said she never—" Patricia whispered, voice shaking, eyes full of disbelief. Mark's voice broke completely. "She didn't. She told me she lost." "I didn't lose him," I said quietly. Both of them froze. I felt the moment hit them like a wave, cold, harsh, undeniable. I left. Mark's eyes snapped to mine, confusion, pain, fear. Everything collapsed inside him at once. "What do you mean left?" he asked, voice trembling. He was no longer angry. He was no longer confident. He was no longer in control. He was a man watching the truth he buried rise back to life. I held his gaze with strength I never had before. "I left because I found out you cheated," I said. "I left because your mother told you to get rid of me. And I left because I was carrying your child." Patricia flinched. Mark staggered back half a step, like I had pushed him. Silence filled the cabin, thick, heavy, suffocating. Patricia's voice was a whisper now. "You had a baby?" I didn't look at her. I looked only at Mark. "You didn't lose him," I repeated softly. "You lost me. And you lost him when you walked away." His face cracked entirely. Then I said the final sentence that shook the floor beneath them, and I wasn't hiding him. I was protecting him. From you. The cabin went still. And the real unraveling began. The room felt colder now. The envelope lay open on the table, the birth certificate exposed under the soft morning light. The paper looked thin, almost fragile, and yet it carried the weight of 7 silent years. It filled the whole cabin with a truth none of us could escape. Mark stared at it like it was something he had been running from, something he hoped would dissolve with time. But time didn't erase truth. It only made its return sharper. Patricia stood frozen beside him, her fingers trembling around the sheet. For the first time since I had known her, she looked powerless. Small. Almost afraid. I stood a few steps away, letting the silence settle. Letting them feel the impact of what they had ignored, what they had laughed at, what they had pushed me to hide. Mark swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't understand." But he did, he just couldn't accept it. He took a slow step toward me, then another, like he was approaching something fragile and dangerous at the same time. "Where is he asked. His voice cracked on the last word. I didn't look away. "He's safe." Mark closed his eyes for a moment, breathing in, like he needed to gather every piece of strength left inside him. "I want to," he tried again. "I just want to see him." Patricia turned sharply toward him. "Mark, she's lying. She must be lying. You said she never—" He didn't answer her. He couldn't. His eyes stayed locked on mine. There was no anger left in him now, no arrogance, no confidence, just a hollow, aching fear. I stepped back, giving myself space, feeling my chest rise and fall with a deep, steady breath. My voice was calm, stronger than before. "You don't get to see him." He flinched. Hard. "Why?" he whispered, like a child lost in a dark room. I have a right." "No," I said. "You had a right, years ago, before you walked away. Before you chose her," I nodded toward Patricia, "over me. Before you chose someone else over our family." He looked like the words had cut him. But it wasn't pain I gave him. It was the truth. Patricia finally found her voice again, though it trembled badly. "This is ridiculous. You can't come here and make these accusations. You can't just—" "You wanted me gone," I said simply. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "You told him to leave me. You told him I was weak. You told him I would ruin his life." And he listened. Patricia's face twisted with guilt she didn't know how to hide. I turned to Mark again. "And that day when I stood right here crying, you didn't even look at me. You walked away, both of you did." Mark pressed his palm to his forehead, struggling to breathe evenly. "I thought, you lost. You believed what made you comfortable," I said. You believed the version that kept your life simple. The pain in his eyes deepened, but pain alone couldn't fix anything. I stepped toward the table and gently laid my fingers on the birth certificate. My son is 7 years old now, I said softly. He laughs like me and frowns like you. He loves drawing. He's afraid of the dark. He hates thunderstorms. And he knows nothing about you. Mark's eyes watered. He blinked fast, refusing to let a tear fall. I want to meet him, he whispered. The words were soft, fragile, desperate. I shook my head. You can't. He opened his mouth to argue, but I continued before he could. You don't get to meet a child you didn't want. You don't get to step into his world now. After 7 silent years, you don't get to take something you already threw away. Patricia grabbed Mark's arm. You can go to court. We can fight. I laughed quietly, the sound hollow and tired. Court? Patricia, your son signed everything away without reading a single page. You pressured him to leave everything behind, remember? You wanted me out. You pushed the divorce. You told me to disappear. She stiffened. You made sure I signed the cabin over, but you forgot one thing. I lifted the birth certificate. Children aren't property you can take or erase. Patricia paled. Mark stared at the floor, breathing unevenly. I never wanted him erased. My heart pulled at his words for a split second, but only for a split second. He had 7 years to want something. He chose nothing. I stepped back, putting distance between us. You didn't want me, I said. You didn't want us. You wanted an escape. And you took it. Mark covered his face with his hands. The sound he made, quiet, broken, echoed through the cabin. I turned toward the door, letting my fingers brush the handle. The wood felt warm under my skin. A strange comfort. A reminder that I controlled this moment now. Patricia tried to regain control of her voice. You can't just walk away and take everything. This cabin is ours. We have every right to be here. I looked at her with calm, steady eyes. No, I said, you don't. She froze. Mark lifted his head. What do you mean? He asked quietly. I stepped aside so they could see the living room more clearly. Everything was spotless, organized, prepared. I bought this cabin back 5 years ago, I said. Mark blinked, confused. That's not possible. I signed it over to my mom. She sold it, I replied. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut the air. Patricia's mouth fell open. I didn't. Yes, you did, I said calmly. 5 years ago. You put it for sale. Maybe you needed money. Maybe you thought I moved far away. Maybe you thought I'd never see the listing. Patricia took a step back, like the ground under her had shifted. I saw it, I said, and I bought it, quietly, legally, completely. Mark's lips parted. No, I nodded, and last month I signed it over to my son, legally, fully. This house, the one you mocked me for crying in, the one you laughed about, belongs to him now. The truth hit them with full force. You're trespassing, I said softly. Patricia stumbled back like she had been slapped. You can't do that. Mark, say something. Stop her. But he couldn't speak. He stared at me like his entire world had collapsed into one small, painful point. I'm asking you to leave, I said. Now. We have nowhere to go, Patricia whispered. That's not my problem, I replied. Mark ran a trembling hand through his hair. I just want to see him. Please. Just once. I looked at him, not with anger, not with softness, but with finality. You lost that right 7 years ago. His chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, like he was afraid he might collapse. Patricia looked at him, then at me, desperate for control she no longer had. I opened the cabin door, letting the light pour inside. My son will come here next weekend, I said. If either of you are still inside, I'll call the police. Patricia gasped. You wouldn't? I already would, I replied. And I will. Mark took one small step toward me, tears finally escaping the corners of his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I felt the words. But they didn't reach me. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. Some betrayals don't get second chances. I stepped outside, letting the wind brush past me. I didn't look back until I reached the edge of the porch. Mark was standing frozen in the doorway. Patricia stood behind him, shaking, silent for once in her life. They looked small, defeated, lost. The lake glimmered behind them, calm as ever, reflecting the sky like it had no idea of the storm inside the cabin. I breathed in the cold air and said the final line. Not loud, not cruel, just true. For years, you told me to cry in this cabin. I paused. But today, it's your turn. I walked away as the wind carried the last words behind me. Some houses remember pain, but this one finally remembered who it belonged to.